Welcome to Exiting Existence. Thanks for tuning in. As usual, like, subscribe, share. You know what to do. So, with that being said, as I said in my last video, I'm going through kind of a series here of taking the daily breads that I've written over the last couple of years and expounding on them and getting into more detail. And so, in light of the moment that we're in right now with this coronavirus and this global pandemic, there's a lot of fear, a lot of things right now in life being shaken, relationships being shaken, things that you have your trust in are being shaken. And in the context of that, I felt like this particular daily bread really stood out. And the one I'm talking about is called Disastrous Love. So if you'd like to check out the text version, you can go to exitingexistence.com. It's called Disastrous Love. It's probably page 2 or 3, I believe. And I felt like it was really appropriate for the time, because right now in this moment that we are in, we are all experiencing a large degree of uncertainty, probably more so than maybe ever in your entire life. I mean, our health is at risk, our economy is at risk, our family is at risk, our loved ones are at risk, right? There's a lot right now that feels very uncertain, and as a result of that, I think this particular blog is very appropriate, and so I'm gonna break this down for you guys, and I hope it blesses you, and I hope it encourages you in this very uncertain time that we're in. So once again, exitingexistence.com, daily bread. It's called Disastrous Love. So let's dive right in. So Ezekiel 3:9. For those of you that are not familiar with this blog, the way I write it is it's not every morning, but I try to do one every morning. I wake up, I go into prayer, I ask the Lord to give me a verse, and then whatever He gives me through the Spirit, whatever the verse is, I have no idea what it is. I just pull whatever I feel like He leads me to, and then I write on it. And there's no what do you call it? No curation, nothing. I mean, this is just as best as I possibly can, just taking what He gave me and then writing on whatever revelation He gives me on the verse. And so the verse for this particular blog, Disastrous Love, was Ezekiel 3:9. It says, "So I handed her over to her lovers, the men of Asher she lusted after." That's a short one, so I'm going to read it one more time. "So I handed her over to her lovers, the men of Asher she lusted after." Now, that is a very strange verse if you take it out of context. So let me add a bit more context here. So basically, what's happening is the Lord is handing the Israelites over, sending them into exile to their enemies, and He's going through and listing out the reasons. Why is He handing them over? Why are they going into exile? And so the reason that He lists here is that they lusted after this people group. And I don't know what the context is. I'd have to go in and do a bit more research on that. But what really struck me in this verse wasn't so much the reason that they were being handed over. It was more what He used to describe the relationship with Israel. He says, "So I handed her over to her lovers." And lovers is the part that really stood out to me. I thought that was very strange. I found myself thinking, I'm like, why is this idea of us having other lovers so important to the Lord? What's so important about that? Outside of just Him being God and wanting to have a relationship with us, right? Like, that part's important, but we have to not reduce God to humanistic terms. We need to remember what God is, not just who He is, right? I think a lot of times we like to talk about who God is, His character, but I don't think we think often enough about what God is. God is He is a being that exists outside of time. He is an immortal, multi-dimensional, ultra-powerful, omniscient, omnipresent, all-knowing being. Does not need anything from anyone. The elements literally respond to His voice. I mean, this is a being who could unmake us just by thinking about it. I mean, you got to understand that, like, what God is beyond comprehension. And yet in some aspects we're able to comprehend him because we're made in his image. And so when you think about what God is in those terms, then it becomes a lot more difficult to reduce all of this down to, oh, well, God just wants us to like him or love him because he's God, because he made us and he just cares about this relationship, right? That's a very limited way of thinking about God, right? So when you think about God in the context of who and what he is, this idea of God being concerned about us having other lovers becomes very peculiar, right? And then you could even take it a bit further when you go and you look at the first commandment. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength. And I found myself thinking, I'm like, okay, well, why is that the first commandment? Of all the things that God could command us to do, I would think love one another would be the first commandment because, we deal with each other on a day-to-day basis, and if you look at the rest of the commandments, really all the rest of the commandments have to do with us. They're there to protect us from ourselves and protect us from each other. But then you have this one very strange verse, love the Lord your God. What does that have to do with protecting us? How does that benefit us? And so as I started to think through it and pray on this is what I felt like the Lord began to show me. Basically, we need to understand the power of love. Love is an unbelievably powerful force. It is strong enough that a broken heart, scientifically, right? A broken heart can actually kill you. There's these sinews inside your heart that kind of hold it together. And under enough stress, those things can break and a person can die. Now, obviously, that's not super common. Most people aren't like literally dying of a broken heart, but there is some degree of scientific support for the idea that you could be distraught enough that those things could break and that you could die. And there's plenty of research done on stress and what stress does to the body and everything else. And so, if you think about what is the thing that devastates a person more than anything else is when someone or something that they love disappoints them. When someone or something that a person loves disappoints or breaks their heart or fails them, man, it can take a person to the darkest places. There was a man who went to an Amish school and shot up the school and committed suicide. And after they did some research to figure out like what the motivation was, come to find out his son had died in a shooting. And it wasn't immediate. It was over time. He just seemed to fall into a darkness that he wasn't able to come back out of. And as a result of that bitterness consumed him until that bitterness then overflowed and destroyed other lives. And that is the opposite end of love. This is what the opposite side of love looks like, right? When somebody loves something and it gets taken away from them, or they love something and it disappoints, or they love something and it fails, the desperation and devastation that produces in a person can take a person to places that you cannot even imagine. And as a result of that, the actions that follow are highly destructive, or another word you could use for it is disastrous. And the thing is that love has the power to be beautiful and powerful and impactful, but it also has the power to be disastrous if you love the wrong things. And this is why we are commanded to love the Lord our God with all our heart and all our soul and all our mind. It's not because God is petty or lonely or requires our love in any way. He is not so simple and human as that. No, God is beyond reach, beyond needing anything. That command is for us, because the truth is that the only thing in the known universe, the only thing that will never fail us, the only thing that we can hope in, that we can love with every single part of our being and never be disappointed, is the Lord our God. He is the only thing that is immortal, that will never die. He is the only thing that is completely trustworthy, that will never lie to us. He is the only thing that is indestructible, that will never fail us. Nothing that we love in this life, nothing will hold up to the test but God. He's the only thing that will hold up. And if we love anything, if there is anything in our life that we love, a family member, a wife, a child, an object, anything, money, nothing that we love in this life, nothing will stand the test except for God. That's it. And that's why we are commanded to love Him first and foremost above all else, because God knows that if our heart is not firmly rooted in Him, then when all of these other things fail, when all of these other things fail us, it will take us down a disastrous path. The results of loving something more than God are disastrous because they will all fail you eventually. You could have the perfect spouse, perfect husband, perfect wife, but one day they will die. You could have the perfect children, the best children in the world, but one day they will fail you. They will disappoint. One day they will make a mistake, and when they do, it will break your heart. And if your heart is not firmly rooted in the Lord your God, when that happens, you won't be able to handle it. It's disastrous. Does that make sense? And so this is why we have to love the Lord our God. We have to love Him with every part of our being. We have to prioritize loving God more than anything else, because that is the only thing that can protect you from the disastrous results of heartbreak. And so God isn't this simple, this petty human thing that just needs us and is so upset with us because we don't love Him and He's jealous and all this other stuff. No, God doesn't need anything from us. That command is there for our protection. It is there to protect us from the disastrous and devastating results of our heart being disappointed. And that is the unbelievable power of understanding God's motivation behind this verse, because when you get this, when you really get it, now don't get me wrong, the transition is hard. The process of breaking up with, because that's what happens. If you have a love relationship with anything, with your job, with your wife, with your kids, if you have a love relationship that is misprioritized, that you now have to reprioritize and you have to get God back on top, there's a breakup that occurs there. There's a process of reprioritization, and it is painful and it is hard because, as we just talked about, right? Breaking up with something is disastrous. Having a loss in love is disastrous. But if that process is leading to placing your love in God first and reprioritizing, getting Him back on top, the results are stability and strength and security and certainty and all of the things that you are going to need in this time of uncertainty. Right now, guys, we are in an unprecedented moment. There are people around us that are going to die. There are economic results that are going to happen, ramifications that are going to occur because of this situation. Now, I believe that the Lord is going to come through and do something mighty and miraculous, but don't think for a minute that this is over, or that this uncertainty is just going to pass and we're just going to snap our fingers and go back to normal. It's not going to happen. And so if your love is in anything other than the Lord your God, if you have this piece misprioritized in your life, let me assure you that you are in for disaster. And I want to warn you in advance that if you will take heed of this and you will get that priority right, while the process will be painful, the result will not be disastrous. The result will be security and certainty and all of the things that are being shaken right now and everything that's going on. Like if you're feeling that, if right now you're in a moment where, you loved your job and you lost it, you loved a family member and lost them to the coronavirus, or you're going through that experience right now, I want to encourage you to get that love prioritized in the right place, because it's the only safe thing to love. God is the only safe thing to love. And until you love Him first, it is not safe to love anything else. It is not safe to love anything else if you don't love the Lord your God first, because that is the foundation that you have to take hold of. And so if you're in a moment right now in a place where this pandemic is disrupting your life and you're feeling that uncertainty, check your heart. Check your heart. See if there's something else that you're in love with and maybe you didn't realize it. Sometimes we love things and we don't even know it. It doesn't happen, like more often than not, when our love is misprioritized, it's not intentional. It's not like we wake up and go, oh, you know what, I'm going to love this over God. It doesn't work that way. It's something that's usually gradual. It's something where, if you ever saw The Lord of the Rings, it kind of reminds me of that, where, it starts out, you're like, wow, that's a pretty ring. But then over time, it's like, start turning into that Smeagol, right? And it goes from being like, wow, I really like this job. What a blessing. To, man, really love this job. This is such a blessing to, this is my job. I like this job. This is my job. It's my precious, right? No one will take my precious from me, even God, right? And then eventually you get like holding on to this thing. And now when the time comes where the Lord comes calling and he says, I'm turning you over to your lovers. When that time comes, then that love becomes disastrous, right? And that's the result. So I've labored this point, I think enough. But check your heart. See if there's anything that you're loving more than God right now, because disaster is happening. We are in the midst of a disaster right now, and the only thing safe is Him. And so I want to encourage you to remember to love the Lord your God. So with that, Ezekiel 3:9, disastrous love. Exitingexistence.com if you want to go check that out in the print version. Like, subscribe, share, and I appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time.